I actually love tea in the morning. Anyway, let's just get right into it. What's up, guys? Roku here, and welcome to a video that I think will be very helpful to those of you looking to get the most out of this game. This video is about all of the most common top laning mistakes and how you should be correcting them, right? This video is basically going to include all of the mistakes that I've seen in my coaching students that basically most of them share, right? So these are the most common mistakes I've seen among my coaching students. And though they have specific different problems of their own, and this video isn't going to replace an actual coaching session with someone where they're going to give you a specialized breakdown, this video is going to give you direction, basically. And in my opinion, to most low elo players who want to improve, direction is the number one thing they need, right? It's the one thing they lack, because I've talked to a lot of lower elo players on why they think they're struggling, and a lot of the time they basically have no idea what they're talking about, right? So here are some of the most common mistakes that I observe, and I'm 99% sure that and everyone watching this will have at least a few of these mistakes that they can find in themselves that, with the tactics that I outline in the video, will be able to mistake. Also, apologies. Anyway. I do coachings more often now, so you can head down into my Discord and DM me for a coaching session. It's basically, at the moment, I think around 30 euros for a 2-hour session, so yeah, I try to cover all bases in my session. But yeah, that's the link to my coaching session, and also like, comment, and subscribe, because I am going to be making more general top laner content, because I'd like to help out as many people as possible. So yeah, let's just get right into our first mistake, and this is too rigid, right? Now, the actual first mistake that I can kind of find in a lot of players is their mentality, but I have made my points about mentality over and over again so often that I don't think it's worth it to repeat myself anymore. The whole thing of try to training game, don't blame your team, and etc. Don't fixate on how do I 1v9 every game. That's just delusion. These kinds of things, right? So I tried to leave that point out because it's already in so many of my videos. So I'm gonna start off with this point instead. Too rigid, either in their builds or in their runes. This problem is basically where a player only runs one specific build or one specific rune page into every single game. Now, right, it's not bad to run one specific build into every single game. It's just sometimes I see the player buying things in an order that makes no sense whatsoever, right? They're up against a auto-attacking top laner and jungler, and they're still going for a stride breaker without finishing their tabbies. Things like this, that's there are so many fundamental errors with not just the items they build, but the orders they build them in. And this is because the player has gotten too used to doing one thing and they can't change out of it. This is the same thing for rune pages, right? A lot of the players that I see, and this is a habit from before the new rune system was in place, because before the new rune system was in place, you had to actually buy your runes and quints and actually set your runes before the game. You couldn't change them in champ select, but now you can. So the recommended thing to do is have one rune page and change it in every single champ select, right? Try to analyze the game in the champ select and figure out what you need to build, instead of just, going autopilot into a game and just letting the game play itself, basically, right? The number one culprit for these kinds of build errors, in my experience, are comfort items. What is a comfort item? It's something that I'm kind of defining here, so it's not really something that's well established in the League community. But a comfort item is an item that people gravitate towards, which they build way more often than they should, right? Let's say for Darius specifically, because this is the Darius channel, items like Thornmail, Death Stance, Black Cleaver, sometimes Chempunk Chainsword, I hate right. Anyway, sometimes that item, right? It's I see players where they build one of these items into every single one of their games. So that's why I call it a comfort item. Basically, this player has gotten too used to that item, right? and they build it every single game thinking it's good into everything. And a lot of times in game, they try to bend the rules of the game to like trick themselves into thinking that their buy is justified, right? A lot of the times these items aren't like the best for the situation at all, right? All the items I listed here are extremely situational buys that you're buying in 1 out of 20 games, basically, right? Not every single game. The core build of Strybreaker, Styrax, Gargoyle works into 95% of the cases, but there are some cases where you're better off with Strybreaker into Deadman's into full tank, whatever, right? There's so much you can do with builds, right? So if you're a player who lacks knowledge, I recommend stick to Strybreaker, Styrax, Gargoyle, full tank. But if you like to know more about the items, right? Check out my items guide video. I'll leave a link to it in a card and the description. And in that video, I give information on what circumstances you need to build every single item in, right? And then what you're gonna do is use that information while you are in game. So let's say I said, if you're up against a Vladimir, right, you gotta buy Chempunk Chainsword. Next time you're in game, you buy that versus Vladimir, right? You gotta apply what you learn in game, because if you don't apply it, you're not gonna learn it, right? A good way to just get rid of all these comfort items is to just accept the fact that the items that you find the most fun are usually not the best items, right? Sometimes we have to do things that are unfun to have a better chance at winning. And I guess it's the point where you have to decide whether you like having more fun or whether you want to win more, right? But I digress. I'll also leave a link to the description near that item guide video, a link to my rune guide video, where I'll be breaking down all the rune pages you can take on Darius, specifically like the conquer page with either resolve or sorcery, right? I'll break down that page because honestly, the phase rush page works only into basically Nasus and Tryndamere, so I didn't see much use of it because like you don't run into these guys that often, and Tryndamere can be combated with like Conqueror. But anyway, so yeah, I'll leave a link to both of those in the description, along with my playlist to my Darius Masterclass, which contains basically all of the fundamental videos for Darius. Anyway, let's just go into the next video, into the next tip. Apologies. Basic mechanics not mastered. Now, we are in a new season, right? And this season, at least from where I'm standing, the hardcore mechanics don't need to be mastered as insanely as they used to be, right? The game being so fast theoretically increases mechanics, but in practice, the game being so fast basically cuts out the need for so many mechanical things that you do just for the sake of being careful, right? It just makes the game so binary. Well, I do hate that the game is like this, right? It does mean that, like, you know, you no longer have to be some mechanical faker god. But the most important part about this season is macro and understanding, right? It's like you have to like make the right decisions at the right times. This is not saying that the basic mechanics aren't important at all, though, right? So this is the part, like, we've come to the basic mistake, right? Macro and mechanics and, you know, awareness of the map and etc. are infinitely more important than mechanics, but you need to have a minimum of mechanics to actually make use of your champion, right? I see things all the time where people play champions that they just don't know how to play, right? They play Darius, they can't land their Qs, they can't do auto W. They play Mordekaiser, they misuse their W. They, you know, when they won't have to backwards E someone, they do it wrong and they actually kill themselves, you know? It's like all these mechanical errors that are basically like the fundamentals of the character that they play, right? It's not insanely important to have amazing mechanics, but it is important to have the bare minimum so that you can actually pilot your champion and put that champion in the right place at the right time and actually make use of their abilities, right? The basic idea, I think, to overcome this, to basically improve the bare minimum of your mechanics, is to make sure that you actually play the game enough. Right? That's the most fundamental thing. A lot of the times, people don't play the game enough, or play specific champions enough to get good at them. They just hop around on champions, or they just don't even play the game as much as they should, right? And this basically leads to them having a lot of mechanical errors, where they're better off basically playing champions that have no mechanics, right? So, like, you gotta get to the basics of your champion. I do have my, Darius combo guide. I'll link it in the description as well, which you can use to master your Darius mechanics. But I don't want you to just look at that video, right? When you have these combo guides, like I said, when you learn something, you have to use it in game, right? I've had people in my coachings where I'm teaching them all my combos, and they're doing it insanely well in the practice tool. But then when it comes to in game, they can't even do their basic combos. Like they know the combos, they just don't use them in game, and that's the part that you need to take care of, right? You have to use this stuff in game. So go into a practice tool before your league session for 10 minutes to make sure that your wrists are warmed up, right? Don't just hop into first game of the day, because first game of the day is usually just troll and curse. So make sure your hands are warmed up and flexible to the first game of the day. Get into the practice tool, practice all them combos, and then once you're done with that, try to make sure that you use the combos and mechanics you learned in game. Okay. You can use specific high elo footage to get inspiration on how you should be using your abilities, but in general, I think we're getting into a territory where mechanics are a thing that are kind of specific to you. Each player kind of plays in their own start doing a specific play style, and you just have to use the knowledge out there and your own time and your playstyle to kind of forge how you specifically play the game, right? Some people are more about the all-in, some people are more about the 1v1, some people are more defensive, etc., 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 right? But the basic idea is you gotta solve your basic mechanics, right? You gotta know at least the bare minimum of how your champions work. Lack of champion knowledge. This mistake basically bleeds into every single one of these other, categories, I guess. But a lot of the times, there's often a complete lack of understanding as to what other champions do, right? It's I'm not saying that there's no awareness, right? People know that, let's say Volibear has a stun, Volibear has the lightning thing, but people don't understand what that Volibear is going to do with those abilities, right? It's not just bad because they can't anticipate the enemy champions, but it's also bad because they actually don't know what their ally champions do, right? So let's say you're going to get 2v1'd, but then you have a jungler that's in the river. Depending on what champion your jungler has, you either go in and fight this or you just back off, right? And it's champion knowledge and just knowing what specific champions do is so crucial to this game that if you don't understand let's say what Shaco does, you're just inting, because that Shaco is going to be able to cheese gank you over and over again if you aren't aware of what he's capable of. So here's my tip for trying to make sure that you understand these things. Every time you get into a game, try to have a list, like a notebook or a journal or something, and write down the names. You can also do it on a notepad file, whatever. You just need a way to note it down. But you gotta write down the names of every single champion that you're up against that you don't know what their abilities do, etc. Right? And afterwards, you go onto YouTube or you go onto the wiki, or you even if you have the champion bot, then you just go into practice tool, and then you just learn all their abilities and try them out. Right? It feels weird to just practice and do research on a champion that you're not playing, but we're not learning this to play this champion. We're learning this to how to play against this champion, right? So for example, we're playing against Fiora, right? A lot of people complain about Fiora, but the key thing about beating Fiora is knowing how her vitals spawn, okay? So you go on YouTube or wiki or wherever, and you find out how Fiora's vitals spawn. That's just it. So the next time you're up against the Fiora, you're going to know exactly how her vitals spawn, and you're going to know exactly how to position to stop her from getting her next one, right? So it's we're basically doing a scouting on champions so that we can better play ourselves, okay? So this is very, very important, not just for matchups, but for every single champion in the game, okay? You gotta know as much as possible and like leave no room for you to get surprised. But like if there is a hierarchy of like what champions are the most important to know about, I would say top laners, junglers, roamers, and then everything else. Okay? So top laners is simple. You gotta learn matchups. Junglers to know whether you can 2v1 them and to know how you can play together with your own jungler, because a big part about top lane in the season is effectively working together with your jungler to grind out a lead. Roamers, which is champions like Twisted Fate, Galio, Bard, champions who are able to effectively like impact the entire map without actually being anywhere close to that, where they're trying to impact. And then everything else. When I say everything else, it's like all the characters that you basically don't interact with until the end of laning phase, okay? They're not too important to you, but you have to get to learn those guys eventually. It's just that these earlier guys are a bit more important, right? Let's just get into our next tip. Tunnel vision. This is a mistake that's like, it's kind of a funny mistake to watch someone do. But the basic idea is, a lot of the times people are too fixated on a single target, right? Let's say, and this is a mistake for Darius, right? So we all know that Darius, if he hits someone 5 times, he can get his Noxymite passive, or if he kills someone with his ultimate, he also gets his Noxymite passive, right? So Darius' goal in teamfights, get his passive. That's number 1, right? So I'm coaching people, and they're in a fight with this frontliner. Let's say they're in a fight with a Hecarim, and they're just hitting him, they're getting stacks on him, and like suddenly a 300 HP enemy Caitlyn just walks perfectly in range to be autoed and ulted, straight up. And the guy I'm coaching still fights this Hecarim, right? It's like there's no awareness of like the whole fight. There's just this tunnel vision on this one specific target. And that's like an issue with a lot of top laners. It's like they focus on this one dude and they just ignore everything else, which leads to them suffering in teamfights. Because what basically happens is they're like way more susceptible to being manipulated by the enemy team. I don't mean manipulate like, oh yeah, manipulate you, mind control. Like, not like that. Like, they make you move in a way where you're as less of a threat as possible, right? You have to be opportunistic in this game. You have to keep your eyes open and keep yourself focused in this game. And you have to pay attention, right? The thing about tunnel vision is it's a combination of thinking and having focus, right? So the basic idea is this. In League, the player who thinks the most wins the game, right? So when you load into your champ select, you're gonna think about your top lane matchup, your jungle matchup, and you also have to like think about how you guys win team fights. How does your team together beat the enemy team together, right? You have to visualize team fights in your mind. This is a very, very important part about League. Before any play happens, you have to imagine it in your head. And on top of imagining it in your head, you have to simulate it in your head. If this happens, I'll do this. If this happens, I'll do this, just in your head. Right? You gotta run through all of that before the fight happens, right? I know it sounds a bit complicated and difficult to grasp, but the basic idea is, once you're in the fight, there's no time to think. You can't think in the middle of the fight. If you do, it's gonna be too late. So what you do is you do all the necessary thinking before the fight, so that you have the advantage, right? So it's like you have to basically visualize the team fight and etc. before it happens, and you have to pay attention to your surroundings. So all this thinking that you do actually comes into play. You're gonna tell yourself, okay, if Morgana ults, I'll ghost out of her range, and if you're not paying attention, she just ults and kills you, right? So you have to pay attention and you have to think about things, right? And this is one of those tips where the lack of champion knowledge actually bleeds into, because if you don't know what champions do, then that tunnel vision is going to be even hard to get out of, because actually you literally don't know what to consider. Lack of awareness. This is more of a macro thing as opposed to the tunnel vision, right? Tunnel vision is basically lack of awareness of what's going on in your screen, whereas tunnel vision is like, it's basically like it's like a okay. Tunnel vision is lack of awareness on your screen, but this lack of awareness is like complete disregard for macro and map awareness, right? One of the most fatal flaws of Darius player or a top lane player is basically zero map awareness. They don't look at like the map at all. They don't look at what the mid laner champions are, if they can roam. They don't look at who's missing. And the funniest thing is when they put down wards and they don't even look at the wards. So it was basically useless, right? The basic idea in Darius specifically is that you have to be in the right place at the right time. So getting sick macro is fundamental to playing this champion properly, right? The basic idea with macro, and macro is one of those topics in League of Legends, one of those skills that is not so like mechanical and easy to figure out, right? It's not like CSing or deaths or things that you can track with like numbers. Macro is a very like macro changes from game to game, right? And this is because we're basically going into the very deep definitions of the game League of Legends, but basically because every game is different, because every player is different, macro decisions for every single game will also be different, right? You just have to make sure you're able to make these good decisions. So the number one thing you gotta do to take care of these awareness issue is map awareness, right? You gotta look at your map. And you can't just look at your map. You gotta actually read your map. Because it's like, yeah, I look at the map. Well, you saw that two of them were missing. You looked at the map. So you obviously didn't look. Like, he's like, you have to look at the map. Pay attention to what's on the map. And then go back into your gameplay, right? The way I train this is using a meditation bell. So I basically Googled, like, on YouTube, a meditation bell that rings every 15 seconds or 30 seconds, up to you, right? It should be something like less than 30 seconds for optimal, focus, I guess, right? So something that's less than 15 seconds, and you start playing that and you reduce the volume so that it's not annoying. And every single time you hear that bell, you look at your map, right? That's your awareness bell. As I call the awareness bell, but you have to train yourself that every time you hear that bell, you look at the map, you count where the enemy players are, you think, can they gank me? You keep an eye on your ward, and you refocus on the game and question your position, right? If you're a player who's very, Scrabble-headed, like you can't focus on the game, you keep thinking about other things, you have a second monitor that you play YouTube videos on all the time, then this technique will help you build focus. Because like, if you're on autopilot and if you're not focused into the game, then you're not going to be able to have any macro, right? So yeah, like map awareness and focus are the two big things about macro. Champion knowledge, again, bleeds into macro. Because if you don't know what champions do, you can't make correct macro decisions, right? Let's say you're up against a Fed Tryndamere. If you don't know how strong a Fed Tryndamere is, you're gonna go match miss split push and you're gonna die. And a decision like that in mid-late game is certain death, okay? So try to make sure that you're aware of your macro surroundings and try to make sure that you move to fights like, that you get to like these big objective fights before they happen so that you can actually impact them. One insane detail about macro is that if you have good macro, and your macro is the best on your team, you can actually lead your team, right? You don't have to be like, oh, my teammates are stupid idiots. You can actually lead them and tell them what to do. And as long as you're not inting, they will listen to you, okay? I know this from experience, but if a player is fed and ahead, then his whole team will listen to him or her, whatever, right? So yeah, right? Fed players are in a position to be leaders for your team. So when you're fed, try to use your macro knowledge to control your teammates. Like, hey, I'm not going to be in that fight and I'm the most fed member. So just wait until I get there and then we start the fight. Or like, hey, I'm taking this inhibitor while I'm split pushing. You guys should try to stop the Baron, but, if it comes like to the, like, if there's all of them there and if you guys have to give it up, then give it up. It's fine, right? And macro also fixes some mistakes like overstaying, which is where you take an objective and instead of just going back to base, you just stay there and you die, right? There's so many macro things in this game that, I could make an entire video on it. But basically speaking, you know, awareness, knowledge, and focus are key to get started when it comes to macro. Sorry for drinking so much tea, by the way. I just woke up, 15 minutes ago, so I'm a bit thirsty. All right. This is an insanely big mistake that is kind of simple, actually. Basically, most of these top lane players just forget about CS in the mid game, right? Unless they play champions that are specifically good at split pushing, right? Where split pushing is their whole identity. A lot of top laners, especially Darius players, just don't CS in the mid game, right? They just don't CS at all. What this leads to is a case where the Darius or the top laner is the same level with everyone on the team. And because they're the front line, they die more often. So they end up dying. And they end up being lower level than everyone. Which is insane. Because for a champion, like for a lot of these bruisers, juggernauts, and etc., they scale insanely hard with levels. Especially Darius, right? Darius gets a ton of HP, ton of AD, so these are the bruisers. And his Noxian Might also scales with his levels, right? Darius specifically scales the hardest with a level advantage. So if you don't have a level advantage, you're not gonna be able to carry the game. Same with other top laners, You ever play a game, you win your lane, you group with your team, and the game gets hard. 10 minutes later, the enemy top laner that you beat is now 1-2 levels ahead of you, right? This is an issue where that guy has farmed the whole game, whereas you have wasted your time and you haven't farmed past the laning phase, right? You have to prioritize farming when laning phase is over. You have to, right? Especially, you have to prioritize getting solo experience, right? The basic way you can do this in most games is to just before you group with your team, you got to go to a side lane and push out 2-3 waves and then look to see if you can group with your team, right? And on your way to your team, you got to kill any jungle camp that's in your way. Don't really listen to your junglers who bitch at you for taking their camps post the laning phase, because they're stupid at that point. Because basically, that camp, because you're closer to that camp, you take it is more beneficial than the jungler going out of his way to come to the camp, right? So let's say that a Drake fight is gonna happen in 1 minute. When it's 1 minute, you go top lane, you go clear 2-3 waves, you get Krugs, and then you run to Drake so that by the time there's 10 seconds left, you're there ready for a fight, right? But if there's 20 seconds left, you have no time to actually go CS. Get run straight into the objective. And this is the whole macro part of this, mistake. Do I farm or do I group with my team? And I'm going to break it down for you real quick here, right? So the basic idea is this. Usually, in order to group, you have to get farm, right? Think of it like a requirement. Must farm before I group. Unless the thing you're grouping for is so important that you can't not be there, right? Let's say you just spawned, there's a massive wave, but your team is posturing to fight for Baron, basically. You can't just let that go. You gotta go in there and help your team, right? But you can only do this 2-3 times in a game before you fall off, right? The big thing about playing these top lane champions is to make sure that you don't fall behind in gold, CS, and experience. So when you're going for these kinds of things where they're so important and you have to be there, just keep in mind you can only do them up to 2-3 times a game. Because if you do it anymore, then you're heavily neglecting your farm. And it's going to lead to you eventually being behind the enemy team, okay? So make sure that you're getting farm in a solo lane or in some jungle camps more often than not. Take the enemy jungle camps if you're split pushing too. That's really big and important. Take crab if you're in the river. Just take whatever you can. Make sure you get gold, CS, and experience. But if there's a big objective, make sure you get there in time, right? There are a lot of exceptions to this, but we're getting into the very big macro territory here, so there are a lot of exceptions and things that are different, but the basic idea is you gotta use your own judgment, right? I gotta be ahead in levels, but is me being this much CS and this much gold ahead worth like my team losing Baron, right? Oh, obviously not. So, use your own judgment to make proper decisions using macro. Bad kiting, right? This is like I don't mean just bad kiting, but not knowing when you should be backing off and then going back in, right? This is more of a Darius specific problem and actually a top lane problem too, but in this game, like you have to change the tempo, I guess, very, very often, right? You have to switch gears very, very often. Sometimes you walk back because your backup isn't here, but then once you've dragged the enemy out in a position where your backup can actually jump on them, you go right back in and help your teammates, right? Or sometimes, let's say you went in, you did all your abilities, but now you have nothing to do, so you gotta go out, wait, and then go back in when you get your abilities back, right? Sometimes, let's say you're against a Volibear, instead of just meat tanking his fucking stun, you have to ghost, you have to E, you have to kite him, and then go back in. It's knowing when to go in and when to back off. This is the specific issue that I think is a big issue with a lot of Darius players, most of them. This was an issue with almost every single one of the Darius players that I've coached, and also some of the top laners as well, right? The problem a lot of the times isn't actually the decisions themselves. They're okay at telling when you should go in, but it's just that they're so slow. The speed of decision making is so slow that they're not effectively able to exploit the key, things in fights, right? Oh, Kai'Sa just used her ultimate, right? Then you just go back in. But a lot of these players wait a bit, and then they go back in. After which period, Kai'Sa has chunked them to 10 HP anyway, and she just kills them, right? You have to make these decisions snappy, and fast. And, this is more of that thinking thing I mentioned from earlier, where you gotta think, beforehand, so you're not busy thinking in the game, right? I think a good way to train this skill is to watch better Darius players play Darius, or watch better top laners play the champion that you're playing, and try to understand when they go in and when they back off, right? For those of you who play Darius, right, I have my informative commentary series. I'll leave a link to the playlist in the description, and in that playlist, I basically explain my decisions between all of my actions. So it should be very, very useful to you guys when you're trying to understand when to go in and when to back off, right? But you basically just need to watch a player who knows what they're doing participate in a team fight, or participate in a 2v1 or an all-in, right? Just watch them do it. And, you should be able to okay, he does it when his Q's down, he backs off, but when it's back up, he tries to go in and tries to land it, right? This is one of those things where champion knowledge, macro, and focus are gonna basically improve on their own. Like I said, League is a very intertwined game, and if you basically fix 3 or 4 things, they'll start helping you fix the other things. So if you fix your other mistakes that I mentioned in this video already, then this mistake is gonna be quite easy for you to fix. But yeah, bad kiting, not knowing when to switch gears is a big, big mistake. And the last mistake, the mistake that basically helps most of the things I've talked about already, is not thinking enough. Carrying over from the last point, and the one before that, and the one before that, a lot of people don't think nearly as much as they should. If there is a point in the game where you're not just thinking about the game, you're trolling, right? You have to think about everything. And I do mean everything. Your matchup. How should you manipulate your wave? How should you position against the enemy jungler? How should you position in an enemy team fight? How should you position around Baron? Should you step into Baron when they have an Ilaoi? Should you position in a different way because they have a Twitch jungler? What kind of abilities does Twitch have? What kind of abilities does Kai'Sa have? Can you one-shot a Sivir? Does Bard, is Bard easy to kill? Or can you play in a way so that, you can not get stunned by his Q, right? If you're fighting Kha'Zix, is there a way you can reduce his isolation damage? All these things, a lot of the time, I'm talking to players who know all of these things, but they just don't think. And this might as well have been a tip for me, because I know pretty much everything that I'm talking about, but I just don't use it in game. So it's the reason why I'm when I'm was like hard stack and etc., I just couldn't like do anything, and I was actually hard stack. This was the reason that was holding me back. I knew a lot of the stuff that could have gotten me like across the border or across the finishing line rather, but I just didn't think enough. You gotta think like about everything in this game. It's insane. It's a game of thinking. Whoever knows more wins. Let's say you're up against in the 2v1 against Echo and Hecarim, right? If you know the weaknesses of Echo and Hecarim better than they know their own weaknesses, then you're gonna be able to murder them, right? It's like knowing what the enemy champion does better than them, knowing how your enemy champion you like interact with each other better than like the enemy, right? If you think more, you're gonna beat them. And a lot of players don't think at all in the downtime that they have, but they start thinking in the middle of the action when you legit have no time to think, right? If you did your thinking before the play, you would know what the right calls are and what the right moves are before the fight even happened. So in the fight, you'll be able to make those decisions instantly. Okay? Thinking is an insanely important tactic in League of Legends, right? And there's honestly not much I can say. Like there's not many specific tips to help you with this like, mistake, because this mistake isn't exactly anything simple or specific. It's just you have to just think more. That's it. You have to think more about the game, and you can never autopilot, right? So this is basically one of the biggest mistakes. And if you can just get the thinking part done, you're gonna like, if you can get this tip and fix this mistake of yours, all the other mistakes will slowly fall into place. Just because you're thinking, you're training your like your brain muscles, I guess, into with League of Legends, right? And the more you do that, the more you grasp macro, the more you grasp positioning, the more you grasp macro decision making. All these things, they come with thinking about the game, and just thinking about the game during the game, like as much as you can, is honestly the only way you can train this skill. Anyway, guys, that is pretty much it for this video. I know I've been kind of slacking with videos lately, but classes have started again, so I'm trying to balance everything. But don't worry, I will be back to making videos shortly. Anyway, I don't want to drag this video on for long enough. Like, comment, and subscribe. Thank you very much for watching the video if you watched this far. And let me know what kind of top laner content you would like to see in the description, because I really do want to make, more general top lane content rather than just Darius content. So yeah, let me know what kind of videos you guys want, and I'll see if I can hook you guys up. Anyway, I'll talk to you guys later. See ya.